There are a lot of bad video games out there, but the ones that are quickly forgotten might just be the lucky ones. Some games are so strangely atrocious that they've secured their place in history, living on well after their time has passed, and even garnering a certain kind of so bad it's good affection. Here are a handful of truly awful games that have somehow become cult classics. E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. Atari's infamously terrible take on E.T. is nearly synonymous with the words bad video game. Rushed into production with only 5 weeks of development, it was a failure so colossal that it helped bring the entire industry to financial ruin in the video game crash of 1983. What really helped to turn E.T. into a cult classic, though, is the story of what happened to it after it failed. For years, gamers heard that thousands of copies had been recalled and reportedly buried in a landfill in New Mexico. While many dismissed it as an urban legend, gaming historians were fascinated by the possibility. In 2014, Zach Penn's documentary about the crash and E.T.'s role in it saw the filmmaker and his crew head to the desert, where they discovered that the rumors were more or less true. E.T. was already one of the most important games in history thanks to its devastating effect on the industry, but finding out that it was actually given a treatment usually reserved for toxic waste is the kind of thing that makes us want to experience it for ourselves. Until we rage quit after 3 minutes like everyone else, that is. Shaq Fu. Shaquille O'Neal is one of the all-time greats on the basketball court. His other pursuits, however, have gotten him a different kind of fame. From his ill-fated rap album to his starring role in the movie Kazam. And then there was Shaq Fu. To be fair, you have to respect how bold it was to make a video game about one of the most dominant basketball players of his era that had nothing to do with basketball. Instead, it was basically Mortal Kombat, but with Shaq. That actually might sound like a good idea, but compared to the era's other fighting games, it was nowhere near as polished or fun. In fact, in its 100th issue, Nintendo Power declared Shaq Fu to be the third worst game of all time. In the years since, though, Shaq's status as a pop culture icon has seen it become a true cult classic. And the weirdest part? It became so beloved that a sequel for current generation consoles was successfully crowdfunded for a release in 2018. No word on whether he's going to drop a new single, though. Deadly Premonition. 2010's Deadly Premonition was a reboot of a game formerly known by the ultra-scary title of Rainy Woods that never made it to release. How bad is Deadly Premonition? The Gamer wrote, "This is the king among kings when you talk about bad games being so horrible that they actually manage to be somewhat competent. With its surreal take on survival horror, Deadly Premonition is often compared to Twin Peaks. But it's not usually a favorable comparison. It's as baffling and hard to follow as a David Lynch project, but without any of the parts where it's well-made, well-acted, or building towards anything. Still, despite its faults, something about Deadly Premonition grabbed people, making it one of the most polarizing games of all time. Destructoid even gave it a 10 out of 10 in a review that praised its perhaps intentional comedy and the ludicrous pantomime of pop culture references that comes at the climax. It might not be Silent Hill, but it definitely has a place in the hearts of gamers.
Clear as a crisp spring morning. F.K. in the coffee.
BloodRayne. If you make a bad video game, the least you can do is make it completely insane. That's the route that Terminal Reality took with BloodRayne, the 2002 start of everyone's favorite franchise about a half-vampire who fights vampires and Nazis. That's right, a franchise. It might not be a great game, but with a premise like that, is it really surprising that it quickly gained a cult following? As for why, that's easy. Sex and violence. The game is extremely gory, with a cheat code you can use to hack off heads and limbs with every attack. And the busty Nazi hunter of the title was featured in Playboy to promote the game. At the end of the day, though, Rain is just a second-rate Lara Croft, with Fangs taking the grindhouse route all the way to 3 video games and a trilogy of exceptionally terrible films.
I would choose death over seeing you as my ruler.
You're interfering with fate. Where the talisman's joined, vampires shall rule the earth.
The Philips CDI's Zelda games. The Philips CDI was a straight-up failure, and it's not hard to tell why.
Awesome is right. Awesome sound, awesome pictures, awesome choices.
They came out swinging with 2 installments of one of the most beloved gaming franchises of all time, But games as bad as Link: The Faces of Evil and Zelda: The Wand of Gamelon are the kind of titles you can only love ironically. The problems began when Nintendo decided to bail on developing games for the console and let Philips develop their own Mario and Zelda games instead. From there, Philips cut so many corners that they were pretty much left with a circle, including outsourcing their animated cutscenes to a Russian studio that created some truly atrocious animation. Those cutscenes are the reason these games are remembered to this day, so terrible that they've managed to live on as memes, even if their console did not. Bill Laimbeer's Combat Basketball. If you aren't familiar with Bill Laimbeer, he was part of the Detroit Pistons' notoriously dirty lineup known as the Bad Boys in the late 80s and early 90s. He's often referred to as one of the dirtiest players in NBA history for getting into on-court fistfights with Michael Jordan and Larry Bird as part of his thuggish strategy.
I like to have a mental edge with their best player. That was Bird. And if you could break him, you could break their whole unit.
So considering his main talent was attempting to injure opposing players, it makes a lot of sense that he'd be the face of a game called Combat Basketball. It takes place in a dystopian future in which Laimbeer ran an ultra-violent basketball league full of teams with names like Mega Plague and Death Skulls, where players wore armor and had to dodge mines and spinning blades. Rolling Stone called it one of the weirdest Super Nintendo games of all time, but its legend lives on while other generic basketball games, with or without Laimbeer, have been forgotten. Home Improvement: Power Tool Pursuit. Video games are full of truly bizarre licensed titles that seem to have no reason to exist. There was an Addams Family game decades after the show had been off the air and years before the movies would revive the franchise, and a Blues Brothers game that defies any attempt at explanation. The weirdest of all, though, might be the Super Nintendo adaptation of the sitcom Home Improvement. The show was about Tim, the Toolman Taylor, having a TV show and dealing with family strife, while getting advice from his neighbor Wilson. None of this should have led to a video game, but yet it did. Home Improvement: Power Tool Pursuit. Unsurprisingly, it had nothing to do with the TV show. Instead, it imagined a better world where Home Improvement was about Tim using power tools to try and kill dinosaurs and mummies. Even more bizarre, the game included an instruction manual that only said, "Real men don't need instructions." That level of absurdity is hard to match, making Power Tool Pursuit the kind of irresistibly bizarre experience that retro gamers crave. Thanks for watching! Click the SVG icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.